Okay, hi everyone. Here we are for part 2 of my narrated drawing of Alexandra Dowling. What you're looking at is exactly where I finished off for part 1. If you watched it, thank you. I really appreciate that. I know it's long, it was an hour-long video. That's basically a decision I made to not fast forward through any of the process, but really to show the entire process of this drawing in real time, and that's how long it takes. This portrait, by the time I'm done, probably will have taken me, I'm going to say 5 to 6 hours, which, if all goes as planned, will be 5 to 6 hours in total of YouTube videos, but obviously not all one video. I don't know how long this part will be, we'll see. My plan is to work less. So in part 1 I started on this side of the face and I worked my way sort of to the center as far as the second layer of shading goes. I'm going to work my way through to this side. I've also noticed some inconsistencies with her nose that I'm gonna work on fixing today, which I'll do right now. So right here, this area right here is too light, and it's creating a sort of a bulbous effect over here that's not really accurate compared to the image itself. Plus, the cast shadow inside the nostril isn't large enough. Her right nostril is actually more close in size to the size of her left, although the angle of her face is going to make her left nostril look larger no matter what. But let me fix that up a little bit. So I'm going to take, I think, a 3B pencil. Here's one. And just make this cast shadow a bit larger, this area here, this region. And yeah, I like that a bit better. And now I'm going to take this B pencil and I'm just going to work the shading in here a little bit more, because of course this whole region points more down than up, so it doesn't really get much light. And then I'll come around as her nose does and just shade this to show that this region is pointing downward more than upward. Give that a little bit more tone there. And then the same for this region here, also quite a bit darker because of the downward nature of it. And then let's just work that a bit. And then coming into this nostril, open that region a little bit more. Okay. That's a bit better. And then I'll take this in a little bit closer to the center, this shaded region here, so that her nose doesn't look quite as wide as I made it look at first. Yeah, I'll deepen that a little bit. I'm just using this B pencil, very light pressure actually here, just to deepen that side of her nose, to distinguish it from this region here, which is actually her cheek. This is the side plane of the nose, which is facing to the right, whereas this would be facing forward, so this here would be facing towards us, this darker area would be facing to the right, her right. I always talk in terms of the perspective of the drawing, just a habit I have. Maybe that habit comes from theater. I've done quite a bit of musical theater as a performer and as a director, and I think in terms of stage right, stage left, even when I'm in the audience. So when I'm in the audience and I'm talking to people, I say, yeah, look on the right side of the stage. Of course I mean stage right, so the person I'm talking to, if they're not aware of the fact that I'm doing that, they look at the wrong side of the stage, or think that I don't know right from left. Maybe I don't. I mean, really, what's the evidence to say that I do? Okay, let me just shade this under part of her nose, which is facing down. And then there's some definition here, some darker shading because there's a part that's facing to her left, and then there's this part here which I'm not touching, which faces more upward, a little bit more, not really upward, just more upward relatively. Okay, let's just get that a little bit more defined. Okay, it's a little bit darker here, I think, and it lightens up as we come towards the top. I'm going to grab a fresh Q-tip and blend that out a little bit, the work that I've just done. Actually, I'm going to be really delicate with it because I don't want to distribute the graphite too much. I want to keep it where I laid it down as much as possible this time for this round of blending. Okay. Maybe I'll try and take this up, this shadow, take it up a little bit higher, make it fade out a bit more gently, more of a gradient. And sharpen this so it's more obviously the side of her nose. Yeah, I don't love that. Let me fix that a little bit. There's it's just a little more to the curve here than I captured. Let me try that. Try and fix that. Okay, let me take the Q-tip on to that again. Okay, I like that better. This region here, this circle, it's not a blemish and it's not going to stay that way. I mentioned it before. I'm using that to remind me that there's going to be a highlight there. Okay, I am going to use the Q-tip to darken this area a little bit here. Okay. The nose is something that I come back to often as I work through a drawing, so that's certainly not the last time I'm going to be spending time with the nose area. Okay, I think what I want to do, the eyes need to pop a little bit more, just so that I'm more comfortable with the drawing. So I'm just going to do a little bit more shading here. Yeah, I said I would come to this side, but I'm not ready. So I'll do some shading there, and underneath here, just give that a bit more of a downward tilt. This part of the skin facing down more so than I have it. Same over here. I've got the reference photo just to this side. I deliberately put it out of the frame of the drawing because I didn't want it to distract from what's going on, but I'm actually gonna just bring it into the frame for a moment. Yeah, there's the reference photo that I'm looking at, and then I'll just put it back just outside the frame. I have it taped to the table. Oh yeah, in part one of the video, one of the things that I did that I decided wasn't a good idea was I had the camera turned sideways so that the proportions of the video matched the proportions of the paper. But it doesn't look so good on YouTube because it creates these big bands of black on the side, and it's not so easy to watch. So I've changed the orientation of the camera, and now of course you can see some of my drawing surface, which is this really cool drawing table that I bought used off the internet. I think you could buy it new for about 300 bucks. I found somebody selling one for 75. So that's what I use. And I like working on this glass surface. I like to take the paper out of the book, out of the sketchbook, and then I put it flat on the surface, and I feel that gives me a really stable surface to work on. Okay, I'm going to start with, there's this very, very dark area here. It's after her, it's where the ear meets the side of her face, her ear really dips in pretty dramatically from the perspective of how much light is getting through. And so there's a very, very dark well of shadow here. Right now I'm using a B pencil. I will be coming back to this area with a darker pencil for sure. Right now I just want to establish that dark well of shadow. And I'll fade it into the ear a little bit. And then there's some contours. It's actually, ears are the bane of most beginners' existence, and I'm no exception. But I found, with practice, deliberate practice, I started to have some fun with them. There's a lot of dips and creases, and then of course there's some things that are consistent for everyone, every human, when it comes to ears. And you can also take some liberties with them. They don't have to be anatomically perfect for your drawing to still look correct and believable. Okay, actually maybe I'll fill in, no. I was debating filling in some of the cavities in the ear, but I'm gonna leave that for now. Save that for later. Okay, this is pretty dark, but it's the way I've shaded it, it's not quite dark enough yet, but I'll come back to that. Okay, then as we come out onto her actual cheek, as I said in part one, the light source is coming from almost directly above her, and the cue, or the clue I should say, is if you look at the shadow under her chin, the distance on her left side from jawbone to termination of the shadow, and on her right side, the distance is greater on this side, which tells you that the light source isn't centered. It's a little bit over in this direction, and that creates more shadow on this side of her face than on this side of her face. So this is going to be darker. So I'm going to come out here with the B pencil. Really, really, really light strokes for the most part, letting gravity do this. Although I still want it to be pretty dark. The shadow under her chin is much darker than the shadow on her face, and right now that's not the case. So I think before I get too annoyed with myself, I'm going to deepen that shadow under her jaw and under her chin. But first there's some detail I want to get, or some shading I want to get here. So it's dark, but relatively light compared to a shadow well. There's like a pool created right here. She has these strong cheekbones that are creating a little pool of shadow right over here that's darker than the surrounding shadow. So I'm just gonna work that in and then kind of reduce the pressure as I come back to the side and continue to do this. She also has very strong pronounced muscles. Her jaw muscles are quite strong, and they're creating very interesting contours on this side of her face here. And then right around here there's a dip created where her muzzle ends. It's funny when you talk about a muzzle on a human, but this region is a muzzle, just like it is on a dog or whatever. And where that ends, and then there's this strong muscle of her jawbone, there's another little deep shadow well here. I shouldn't say deep, it's just relatively deep. So there's an area of shadow that's darker than what's around it right over here. So I'm just sort of marking that so that I know. And then this comes around, and again, like most humans, pretty much everyone that I've drawn, her cheekbones here create an upward facing plane, upward, towards the light, so it's catching more light. But then it gets darker as you come down. Although that strong muscle that she has pushes some skin up towards the light in this region right here. So I'm going to leave that, at the moment, I'm going to leave that somewhat untouched. And I'll just lay some graphite down in here carefully. Here, really, really, really light strokes right now. Really, really light. Like I'm almost I'm almost taking some of the force of gravity away and just letting the pencil lightly graze the paper. That's because I'm using a B pencil and I don't want to overdo the tone on this layer. I want to give myself some maneuvering space when I come back for subsequent layers. So very, very, very light. Very light. Okay, here the side of the skull kind of flattens. So if you imagine like a sphere, cut the sides off, the side of the skull sort of does that. And that always creates a plane that faces a little bit away from the light here. Wraps around the eye socket and down here. So we'll deepen that. Like that. Everybody has these same planes, these same shadow differentials, but they happen in different places and with different shapes, and that's actually how you capture a likeness, is by getting those shapes, the plane changes and the different directions of the skin based on the contours of the underlying skull. That's how you get a likeness. I didn't know that right away, but I began to realize it the more I drew. Okay, let's deal with this here. There's some darker area here coming out. Okay. Now, if I zoom in on this, which I'll do, you can see that it's quite. She's beautiful, but the pencil strokes are quite ugly, and that's okay because I haven't blended them out yet with a Q-tip. So I'm gonna do that now, and it's cool. It really sort of comes together, the plan that you have. I'm pressing a little bit harder than I was when I was working in the nose area. But you don't really have to press that hard. If you press too hard, it's almost like you grind the strokes in rather than move the graphite around. And really the purpose of this is to move graphite around, not to grind it into the paper, because you're smoothing it out. And as I said in part one, you're basically averaging out the graphite over a surface, where when you put it down with a pencil, it catches in certain areas and then doesn't in other areas. But the Q-tip gives you the ability to really level that out. And of course, the mathematician in me thinks of that as averaging it out, distributing it, I guess. And as I said in part one, the Q-tip picks up graphite. Can you see that? Yeah. The Q-tip picks up graphite and becomes a drawing instrument. You can come into areas that you didn't touch, and you can spread some graphite in those areas, and it gives you a really subtle way to add contour. So I like to do that as I work as well. Okay, not bad. I've created some depth on the left side of her face, but now I'm very unhappy with the similarity in tone between the cast shadow of her head onto her neck and the shading of her head. So I'm going to take, I think, a 3B, maybe a 4B. Yeah, I'll take a 4B, and I'm going to really deepen that cast shadow under her neck to bring her head forward. There's the 4B pencil. This is a funny story. I mean, not really funny. There are funny stories, but you know, and then there are just like stories people say are funny. This is not a Staedtler pencil. This is a Faber-Castell, and I have nothing against Faber-Castell, but I always buy Staedtler pencils. But when I went to the store to get more 4B pencils, they didn't have any Staedtler. So, yep, got this one. Okay, I'll sharpen it and then get to shading this cast shadow area under her neck. And it's interesting, there's reflected light. This area of her neck and her chest is catching light and actually reflecting it back up on her chin. So right at the very edge of her jaw, there's an area of skin that's lighter than everything else. And right now I've got that a little bit, but I don't completely have it. But what I do at this stage, when I really darken these cast shadows, is I make sure I leave some area undarkened, which will create that reflected light tinge to the edge of her jaw. Okay. You don't have to be too careful with this. It's pretty dark. I am giving much more pressure than I was before. I'm not grinding it or anything. It's not like I'm violently shoving it into the paper. But I am creating more pressure. I'm trying to keep things even so that you can't see the borders of areas that I shaded. Because even though smoothing it out with the Q-tip can alleviate some of that, why make yourself have to work harder when you don't need to? Okay, I've closed in this area pretty nicely. She's got some wisps of hair that are coming down here. I'll just remind myself that they're there for now. Okay. Keep on going along here. This area, the bottom of her chin, from around almost the edge of her lower lip to the other edge of her lower lip, is quite horizontal, which I didn't perfectly get with the line work, but that's okay. I can fix that with the way that I shade it. Okay. Shadows, cast shadows especially, because they're sharp, they give you an opportunity to show contour. So it dips a little bit into her throat here, and then it runs straight with a little bit of a curve, and then there's a dip here. And then on this side, there's a definite curve downward like that. Not sharp angles though, gotta stay away from sharp angles. Human beings don't really have sharp angles too often in their features. Okay, I can work pretty quickly on the rest of this shading. The softer pencils, when you work with them, a lot of times they sort of shed graphite onto other areas of the picture, like kind of the way pastels do. And if you don't blow them away, and if you just if you don't notice, or if you notice and don't care and you don't blow them away, they leave streaks if later on you accidentally rub your hand past them, or a piece of paper that I rest my hand on. And I'm just trying to make this area underneath really dark all the way across. So I'm almost using the edge of the pencil instead of the side when I get closer to the chin and the jaw, just to really show that change in depth and that the cast shadow gives you when you're drawing. So that's now quite dark, and the rest of the drawing hasn't caught up to this level of darkness. And when I smooth it, the Q-tip actually picks up some of the graphite and it lightens up again, which I think shows in the video. I can't completely tell by looking at the little camera screen. But yeah, the Q-tip picks up some graphite, like I said, and lightens it up, but it's still this part is sort of ahead of the rest of the drawing now as far as final tone goes. This Q-tip that I just used is quite dark now, and I'm going to keep that because I'm going to be able to use that later for deepening some values. All right, since I'm holding this 4B and I'm looking at her mouth, I think I'll use it to darken the border between her upper and lower lip, and maybe give the upper lip some of the interesting contours. Remember, the upper lip is divided into 3 muscles. There's this one in the center and these 2 on the side that are symmetrical, and they give different shape to the skin itself. And I'm just going to very lightly pull some lines down here just to show those creases. The creases, of course, are in both the upper and lower lip, but they tend to show more on the lower. I'll do a few on the upper lip too. Just hint at them. I've watched a lot of videos on how to draw the mouth and how to draw lips. And really, there are some people who go super realistic on lips, and it's amazing what they do. One day, I think I'll probably try and emulate that. Just do a drawing of lips. For now, for the kinds of drawings that I do, and for the kind of portrait that this is, there's no reason to go hyper realistic. But at the same time, when you watch those, you really learn things that you can apply when you're going for something a little less hyper realistic. Okay, I think that looks okay. Let me darken this cast shadow in the nostril again. And that one. I sort of do that every time I pick up a softer pencil. When I say softer, think darker. Every time I pick up a darker, softer pencil, I go back to these areas that I know are very dark, and I deepen those. There's something a little funny going on with her left nostril. Something I did that maybe was a little too extreme. There's a kneaded eraser. I'm gonna take out just a little bit of graphite here and try and smooth that with a Q-tip to bring the tone back to where it was, but maybe not have this weird shape that I had created by accident before. I don't know. It's a little bit better, but not great. It's okay. For now, anyway. Let me sharpen this. Okay, I think I helped that a little bit. Okay, let me come back here to her eyes. Give them some attention. She has very big eyes compared to the average human. And I find when I'm watching the show, The Musketeers, which is how I discovered this actress. Well, I didn't discover her. How I discovered her existence. I found watching the show that I was always drawn to her eyes because her eyeballs seem large. Not just the eyes, like the openings that show you the eyeball, the eyeballs themselves seemed larger than your average human. Part of the reason why I was drawn to drawing her. Yeah, I really said that. Okay, let's see. I want to darken the irises now too. I think I originally used a 2H. I've got an F. This is an F pencil now. And I'm gonna come in and just make this darker. And then after I do that, I'm going to want to reinforce the cast shadow of the eyelid onto the iris because it's looking the same now. We don't want that. So we'll darken that with the F stay away from that area of highlight. Sometimes you can do some interesting things with that area of highlight, like you can draw reflections and stuff into it. I might actually do that. I've never tried it on a drawing this size, as in this small, but I might be able to hint at it. But I think I'll save that towards the end. Okay, I've made those darker. Now I want to get that 4B back and make sure the cast shadow onto the iris is still showing. And there. And there. And I can darken this too. Maybe thicken it a little bit as well. Yeah. Better. Let's pay some attention to this crease. Really try to use a sharp edge of the pencil when you're doing this crease, which makes me rotate the pencil a lot, because especially when you're using a soft pencil like a 4B, you lose that sharp edge. You rotate the pencil, you get another sharp edge back. People tend to do it subconsciously. It's not something you really have to learn to do. If you've ever used a pencil, you just get a feeling for that. It happens. You don't even notice. Okay, her eyebrows. I can do some darkening here so I can remember where they are. Okay. And now I think I'll come in with this 4B and put a little bit of graphite down, not exactly at the edge of the jawline, because I want to leave a little space where that reflected light from her chest can come up and hit. Not too much. And now that I'm working with a pretty dark pencil, the 4B, I'm again going super, super light with the pressure. Super light. Like it's almost not touching at all. Now here, where the side of her cheek terminates from the perspective of the picture, it's very, very dark as it wraps around to the part that we can't see. So there's a definite dark border there. Okay. Let's make sure I keep this dark too, darker than the surrounding shadow, to honor that little well of shadow there. Same with this one. Just a hint, a little divot in her cheek, down here, along here. Sometimes when you're doing this, I've never, ever had the experience of putting makeup on, or like on myself, or on another person. But I find when I draw, that's what it feels like I'm doing pretty often, is like applying makeup. And then when you get to the hair, which will probably be a part of this YouTube video all on its own, when you get to the hair, you become a hairstylist. You really do, and you start to understand some of the things that hairstylists and makeup artists would be thinking about when they're working, which I think is really cool. It gives you an appreciation for what they do. They really, hairstylists, makeup, people who do makeup, they're artists in every sense of the word, just in the same way that someone who draws is an artist, or someone who does tattooing, or you know, even performing artists. And performing, of course, is something that I've done, as I mentioned earlier. And the more different kinds of art that you embrace or that you experience, the more you realize why the word is applied, the same word applied to all those disciplines, because there's so many things that are the same. Hard to explain, really. It's just something I begin to feel as I work through this. Okay. I don't think I want to do much more at this point with the 4B. I'll get the Q-tip and blend what I've done. And because I left a region, like I didn't touch this part here with the pencil, even though I'm blending, it doesn't take as much graphite as the part that I did touch, and that creates that reflected light along the border that I was talking about. It I don't know if it creates it. It honors it. It honors the fact that it's a real thing in the reference photo. When I'm doing this with the Q-tip, I really want to eliminate any obvious pencil strokes. If I made a mistake and I angled the pencil in a way that I didn't like or whatever, it doesn't always take it out right away. But if you keep going and you keep revisiting the area and you're gentle with it, believe it or not, you don't want to press hard. You just want to be gentle with it. And the more you do it, the more those things become history. Which is good. It's what you want. You want bad things that you've done in your drawing to be history. And the good things, sometimes good things happen by accident, which, you know, actually is a real learning experience. You do something, you're like, whoa, I wasn't really planning that, but I really like how it worked out. And then you're like, wait, how did I do that? I want to remember that for next time. And then you try and reproduce it. Okay. Sometimes you can. Often you can. But sometimes you can't. That's okay. Okay. Yeah, what I was doing was there's that downward slope. Here's the brow ridge, and then the skin comes around and then points down as it goes in towards where the eyelid crease happens. So I was using the Q-tip to create some of that. I didn't put any graphite down here, but the Q-tip has picked up enough that I can start to create some of that. Hi, okay. From your perspective, no time has passed. From my perspective, quite a bit of time has passed. Not days or anything, just a few hours. My daughter came down and told me we had company. And so I went upstairs and we enjoyed our company and I had some dinner. And then my daughter looked at the portrait as it is right now and said, you know what, that's pretty close to what you should call the end of stage 2. And I thought, yeah, you know what, you're right. I'm just going to do a few more things before I call this the end of part 2. I'm going to take the Q-tip that has some graphite on it and I'm just going to introduce some deeper tones here to join the underside of her bottom lip with this region here. Now she has a really, really interesting mouth and it creates some very, very interesting contours. Here at the corner and here at the corner, there are lighter areas because of the way this sort of really pouty lower lip pushes, and it pushes some of this skin over here upwards in this direction, same with this. And then immediately it curves underneath. So I'm trying to capture that as best I can by darkening this area but staying away from those areas just at the corners of her mouth. And I'm going to darken this a little bit to show the chin separate from the side. And I'll just darken this here a little bit using the Q-tip graphite. And this region under the nose, here. The divot, the center of the divot isn't attaching to the base of the nose. There we go. Like that. I'll have to come back and address that a little bit more later. And I think I definitely want to just work on this lower lip a little bit. Right now there's much too much highlight in it, so I'm going to connect the there's just the slightest connection of the lower lip almost to the corner of the bottom of the bottom of the upper lip. So I'll do that with, this is a B pencil, and on this side it doesn't quite connect. And then this part of her lip, which is starting to face down, darker than this part here. And I'll give just a little bit of tone now to this area. I'll probably pull some lights later with the eraser, but for now, give that color. I don't really like how that looks now, so I'm going to deepen the upper part of the lower lip, and this region here, and this region here, and then want to really, there's quite a deep shadow just at the base of her lower lip underneath. I don't really love how that looks now, so let me just even this out. I kind of ruined the shape of her lower lip a little bit with what I did, so I'm trying to repair that. Okay, I think it's okay. I'll extend this a little bit in this direction as well. Okay, let me bring the Q-tip back. And soften this. Okay, I think I fixed the minimal damage I did there. I used this is a very dark end of the Q-tip, so I just wanted to deepen this a little bit, but now I want to spread that out so that it's not too pronounced. So I'll take the lighter side of the Q-tip, and I think I'll do the same trick here. Give it a little bit of a deeper, and then spread it. Now I think I'm actually going to take a fresh Q-tip with no graphite and just average things out a little bit. And so it's looking pretty good for the end of a phase 2. So for stage 1, part 1 of the YouTube drawings, the YouTube series for this drawing, I created I laid a base of tone for her face, and then I started shading from the right to the left, from my right, also her right, to the left, and I wanted to make sure that I made some dark tones here, but I wanted to leave room to make some darker tones here, which I feel like I did. One of the things that I like to do, and that I will do, is look at this drawing in the dark. When you turn off the lights and there's just a little bit of ambient light in the room, and you look at your drawing, a lot of times you see subtle things that you miss when the drawing is perfectly lit. While I'm talking, I figured I'd fix this, not fix it, just define it a bit more than I was planning at this stage. So I'm taking a 2H pencil and I'm just going gently here. Yeah, I think I'll stop there for part 2 of the video series. I actually haven't even checked how long this is yet. But again, thanks so much for watching. Really appreciate it. I really thank you for taking the time to watch. And by all means, please click like if you like the video. Comment. The comments are very helpful when they come. You know, did you like it? Did you not like it? Is there something, a different way you wish I would do these? Something you'd like me to cover? Something I did you have a question about, or feedback, suggestions, anything? Honestly, I'm just a guy looking to help people and also to learn myself. Okay, thanks, and we'll see you soon for part 3. Okay, I'm back just briefly. When I looked at the camera screen and I saw how this area right here looks, I wasn't in love with it. It's just a little bit darker than I want, and I just couldn't bear to leave it like that for the video. So took a kneaded eraser and removed some of that tone. Now I'll blend it out, even out the area, to try and disguise the fact that I took an eraser to that area. I also realize from where I'm sitting, her mouth looks not terrible, but the way it looked in the camera, it looked like I almost made it look fat here. So I'll just smooth that out a little bit. And this region here a little bit too light. And this is not even enough, so it's making some shapes that I don't want. Every time I stop talking, it's because I'm looking at the camera screen. It's kind of interesting, actually, to look at a drawing that way on this tiny little camera screen. It gives you a different perspective on what you're doing. Okay, this area that I erased is still a little bit too light. Okay, actually I kind of like how that worked out. Now, this is a little bit, it's probably as dark as it should be eventually, but with respect to this area around it, it was a bit too light, so I'll smooth that out with the Q-tip. And I think that for part 3, when I get there, I might address the hair a little bit. It's starting to bother me that you can't see the hair, so I'll rough that in. Her hair is going to be a bit of a chore. She's got beadwork and jewels woven into her hair, which I think is super cool and something I've never tried before. So I should be able to have a lot of fun with that. Okay, this is me signing off for real. Thanks so much for watching part 2 of the Alexandra Dowling portrait series, and we'll see you next time.